Who better to explain how scientifically realistic Ridley Scott's The Martian movie is than the former chief scientist of NASA? And that's exactly who I got to sit down and chat with. Under his leadership, he was responsible for the New Horizons spacecraft mission, which was a flyby of Pluto, directed the Juno spacecraft mission to Jupiter, and orchestrated the successful landing of the Curiosity Mars rover, just to name a few. Now, Ridley Scott himself handpicked Jim Green as the head consultant to the Martian movie, which stars Matt Damon, to make sure it was as scientifically accurate as a Hollywood movie can be. So watch till the end to hear about his experience meeting Matt Damon and what it was like to be on the red carpet. Let's get into it. Today I'm joined with former chief scientist of NASA, who also worked on the Martian movie and is going to be explaining to me how realistic some of the scenes were. What were the most interesting projects you worked on during your time as NASA's chief scientist?
I loved the science, loved the missions, but we also did a lot of outreach. And one of the things that I enjoyed doing was working with a variety of movie producers and production groups. One event in particular was the movie The Martian with Ridley Scott and his team. And that was just really exciting. I had a wonderful time.
How did your role as a scientific consultant for the Martian movie come about?
Well, one day I was eating lunch in the NASA headquarters cafeteria. A person in NASA headquarters responsible for interacting with the film industry, Bert Ulrich, hunted me down and said, "Jim, do you have time this afternoon to talk to Ridley Scott?" And I said, "The Ridley Scott?" And he said, "Yep, the Ridley Scott." And I said, "Sure, whatever he needs, I'll be glad to talk to him."
Yeah.
We chatted that afternoon for about 50 minutes, and Ridley was then going to direct a movie called The Martian. He and his team asked me all sorts of science questions. In addition to, hey, did I read the book The Martian? And I hadn't read it yet, but that didn't matter because it was just a chit-chat about what it was like on Mars and how was NASA going to get there and all kinds of things. And so I realized that what we needed to do to get him the information he wanted was to visit several of the NASA centers, like Johnson Space Center and Jet Propulsion Laboratory. But what happened is before I got off the phone with Ridley, he had sent me the script. I had a meeting in the communications office at NASA, and they asked me, well, should we be involved in this? What kind of movie is it, and would it be good for NASA? And I said, we need to be all in. Whatever Ridley wanted, we needed to do. We then started a relationship in terms of me taking some of these people to Johnson. We spent several days there, and JPL. Just about every other day I'd get a set of questions, like 40 or 50 questions. And because I was the head consultant, after I told him how good it was and we ought to do it, so I could ask anybody in the agency. I was really proud of how Ridley took the information that we gave him and really did a good job translating that into the beautiful visuals that the movie had.
That's amazing, and it's also good to hear how much they focus on trying to make it realistic. In the movie, in the beginning, there's a sandstorm, and this is the reason for the evacuation,
right.
Also the reason that Mark Watney gets left behind.
Right.
How realistic is a depiction of the Mars sandstorm?
The sandstorm is the biggest part of the movie that's complete fiction.
Okay.
Just complete fiction, way out there even. Got also to know over time Andy, and we did a number of events together where we were talking about I was talking about the science of Mars, and he was talking about his movie, or his book, and I said, how come you made the sandstorm, or rather the dust storm we'd call it, so unrealistic? He said, this is a man versus nature movie, and I wanted nature to give him the first hit. Dust storms on Mars are really subtle things. They take time to occur. The dust gets lofted very high, can go 20 kilometers high. Then as it accumulates, it blocks out the sun. And so in the middle of the day, it might look like, twilight until it just almost gets dark. Then it takes a while for it to go away, and it can go global. It's nothing like what you saw in the movie.
Right. Watney uses Martian soil and human waste to grow potatoes in a makeshift habitat.
Yeah.
Could this approach realistically sustain life on Mars, and how scientifically accurate was that kind of way of survival?
Actually, NASA's been doing a lot of work work about what to grow on Mars. Really understanding the soils. There's some toxins in the soils. We know them. They're called perchlorates. But the perchlorates aren't everywhere either, which makes it good. Chlorates can actually be washed out of the soil. Now, he doesn't do any of that. He just goes out and grabs some Martian soil and brings it in his hab. And of course, potatoes that came to support their Thanksgiving was available to him, and he cut them up and he grew them. And indeed, we believe that's possible. The key when we look at the soils where Curiosity is, Curiosity has the ability to look at what the pH of the soils are. They're more alkaline, and those soils would be great for beans, for asparagus, not so much potatoes, but we think there'd probably be areas where the soils would be more acidic and the potatoes could grow there too. So I think the general thinking NASA has is he could do that.
The Martian showcases some really cool spacesuits, and I'm curious about how realistic these spacesuits are.
Yeah, I love the spacesuits too. What happened when we first started the dialogue about what kind of spacesuits should be worn in space and on the surface was with Art Max, Ridley Scott's main set designer and artistic person, and took him to JSC, and we went into the suit room. The employees brought out with these EVA suits, these really big, white, thick suits that are used on extravehicular activity, walks, and in the middle of space, and shuttle, and also for International Space Station. And so Art was playing around with him, trying to figure out what he's going to do, and he was even talking about, well, what does it take to puncture one of these gloves? And as he was saying that, I was looking at the NASA employees, and they were shocked. And one of them said, "We do not allow knives." With the astronauts, no knives allowed. So as we left that area, I said, Art, this is a good EVA suit. This is what you should have on the Hermes. But on the surface, we're really looking towards a completely different design. And there are some thinking at that time about what they might look like. David Newman, who was the deputy administrator, had actually gotten a NASA contract before she was the deputy administrator, and really helped design some early concepts. And they were out on the web, and so I had the opportunity to show Art what they looked like. And he took that design and some elements of the EVA suit, combined it to create the surface suits that we saw that the Hermes crew wore. And I thought he did a fabulous job.
In The Martian, the character played by Donald Glover devises a gravity assist trajectory to rescue the mission. How realistic is this? How does the science behind the gravity assist work?
Well, the way he did it and how he described it and how it ended up, it really was quite realistic. The key to how that all worked was the ion engines on the Hermes. The ion engines allow us, in a way, to be like the impulse engines on the Enterprise for Star Trek. It gives us a little thrust, and that thrust builds up over time, and it enables us then to increase our speed in the long run in a fairly substantial way. And of course, what gravity assist does is, as you go to a planet, you can actually maneuver around the planet, and as the planet spins, you can take a little angular momentum away. And so gravity assist does two things. One, changes your direction, and two, gives you a little extra push, and that can be significant. Can actually be a couple kilometers or more a second, depending upon what object you're going to and how close to the object you can get.
The film suggests sealing waste individually with astronaut labels. Is this an accurate representation? In terms of waste management in space?
There's nothing like that in the book, in the sense that the waste is labeled. He does indeed use the waste, which was critical for fertilizer. Curiosity has been making measurements of the soil, and Curiosity finds the soils are moist, which is great. With H2O, water, and they have nitrates in them, which is also important for fertilizer. But still, that's not enough. You have to add something to that. Now that we see that in the film, NASA might think that's important to do. After all, waste tells us how well the body's working, how well it extracts nutrients, things, how well from food that it has, how well perhaps the metabolism of an individual works over time. And they indeed might just hang on to that, and to do that properly, you'd have to label it.
In the storyline, NASA keeps Mark's survival a secret from the returning Hermes crew.
Yeah.
Now, would NASA realistically have withheld this from the astronauts that were going back to Earth?
I find that the interaction at NASA headquarters was really done extremely well. I thought Andy Weir captured, and therefore the movie captures, a lot of the nuances that would be going on inside NASA as it makes decisions. The decision that was initially made by the administrator, Teddy, played by Jeff Daniels, not to tell the Hermes crew, his rationale was, well, there's nothing they can do about it. At that time there was no Rich Parnell maneuver. There was no other additional information. And he said, we'll tell them what's going on once we come up with a strategy to try to go back and save Mark. That I thought was really pretty realistic. There was a good rationale for it.
Right.
He got the input he needed. He made the decision, and they followed it. Now, of course, they followed it up to a point. There comes a time when Rich Parnell figures out, hey, we might be able to use the crew itself. It's already up. It's already got an infrastructure. They have everything they need to be able to do it. They just need to get there through a gravity assist. And so once that's presented to the administrator and his team, had Vincent Kapoor, who is the Mars czar, the person at NASA who oversees all the robotic missions, and then Mitch Henderson, who is the person that is part of the Hermes team. He really is the extension of that team at NASA headquarters, represents them at all events, and has the exact mindset of that crew. And I thought that was also done quite well. Once he decides to go against Teddy's desire to keep it quiet, and then gives that information to the crew, and then they make the decision on their own to use that to go back through a gravity assist to Mars to pick up Mark Watney. That interaction that happens next, I also found that to be quite realistic.
Okay.
Teddy needed Mitch Henderson to get the crew back, to get everybody back as safe. He had the background knowledge, he had everything that was there, although he disobeyed Teddy, and therefore that's going to cost him his job. I felt that was also very realistic.
That's really good that they captured that as well, because I think,
did.
Yeah.
I asked Andy how he came up with that.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I just figured that's what NASA would do because I'd watched every documentary possible for years, and that just seemed right.
During the final stages, Watney suggests a unique maneuver. He actually puts holes in the palms of his spacesuit to control his trajectory in space. Some people call this the Iron Man method. So, how plausible is this idea?
Well, it turns out that's also one of those things that's not very plausible in the sense that his suit is not pumping the kind of oxygen in his suit that gets vented the way it was necessary for him to fly like that. Even though he punctures a hole in his glove, for which he shouldn't have had a knife, NASA wouldn't have let him have a knife, but that's a little unrealistic. However, if he had a propulsion method, he would literally take off.
Did you have a chance to meet Matt Damon on the red carpet? And I've been told something happened on the red carpet. Would you mind sharing that story?
Sure. I didn't meet him on the red carpet. I actually met him at the pre-movie party. So I got invited to the Toronto Film Festival, and that's where I met Matt at the party. I had a NASA pin, which we call Meatball. So it's a nice little lapel pin, and I gave that to him and actually put it on, and we chit-chatted a little bit, and then I was asked to go to the red carpet, which was a big surprise to me. I did not know that I was going to walk the red carpet. I thought, I'm going to go and watch the movie. I'd already seen it several times, but enjoy it with everyone else. And so they said, no, you're going to be the first person on the red carpet. So the big limo picks me up, finds me in the party room, and then I go over and I get out and step out of the vehicle, and there's all these people go, yeah, wow. They have absolutely no idea who the heck I am. Yeah, I could be Ridley Scott's brother or somebody, So I wasn't even wearing my best suit. I didn't think I was going to be, on the red carpet. So I start walking down the red carpet and waving to people, et cetera, et cetera. I get, a few flashes would go on and off, and it was organized in an L. So along one part of the first part of the red carpet are all the people with cameras and taking pictures, with the crowd as the background. And then you make a turn, and then you interact with reporters. And the background is a Toronto Film Festival, logos and everything else. And so I'm walking down to the corner where I'm about ready to make the turn. At the very end, just before I make the turn, and begin to talk to reporters, is the NASA photographers. So I get down to the end, and I go, yeah! And I gave him 2 thumbs up, which Mark Watney does twice in the movie. And I think every camera in the place went out. I got...
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I thought, hey, why did I think of that earlier, right? And I was very privileged to be asked to go and represent NASA at the premiere.
Definitely, I can definitely tell you that by the end of that, everyone knew who you were, and I'm sure Matt was fun to meet as well.
He was. I have to tell you, my son is about his age. Everything about Matt and how I interacted with him and how we responded back, it just reminded me of my son. I mean, this guy was really fun to be with. He was a great guy, down to earth, very generous with his time. It just was a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful cast, and I think that's what helped makes a wonderful movie.
A quick shout out to my sponsors, Metavisionaries and the International Space University. Metavisionaries, co-founded by Dr. Jim Green, is a space education company offering courses globally, both in person and in the metaverse. So if you're looking to pursue a master's studies in space, the International Space University in France is a pretty cool place to be. And I know because I've been there. So if you want to hear about my experience attending the school, what I learned, check out the video in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested in a smart telescope where you can take pictures of the stars, nebula and planets in 4K, and bear in mind this telescope is portable, lightweight and easy to carry anywhere in the world, then check out the description box below where I have a special link that will give you 20% off the telescope, plus an extra $10 off if you use my code LikeAnAstro. All the information is there. As always, stay safe and hopefully one day I will see you in space.